Welcome to the series of unit testing and load testing questions and answers video series. In this whole questions and answers video series, we are going to see that how we can do unit testing and load testing on .NET applications. So let's start with the first question of unit testing and load testing questions and answers video series. What is unit testing and can we see example of the same? So what we'll do in this video is that we'll first try to understand the theory of unit testing. We'll cover some very important points from unit testing aspect. And then we will see two examples. One example using NUnit and the other example using Visual Studio team test. Okay, so let's first start with the theory. Unit testing is a verification methodology, or it's a verification technology, where developers test the individual units of the source code. Now these individual units, can be a function, can be a class, can be a method. So probably when you write a class and you want to test it isolatedly, away from the UI, away from anything else, so that's where unit testing comes into picture. Now these tests are conducted during development. I'm going to say as soon as you have finished writing your class or a function or a subroutine, you can write unit test on that and you can run the unit test. Unit test is also called as white box testing, and there are two what you call accepted ways of doing unit test in .NET. First is by using NUnit and the other one is by using Visual Studio unit test. So what we'll do is that we'll see a simple sample or sample of a unit test. One is using NUnit and the other is using Visual Studio test. So let's first start with NUnit. Before we even start ahead and we talk about NUnit or we talk about the Visual Studio test system, let's first look into the class which we're going to test. So here I have a simple class called as CLS invoice calculation, which has a function called as calculate cost. It takes in this function basically takes in per product cost and number of products, and it multiplies the per product cost and number of products to give out the total cost of the whole order. So this is a class on which we want to write a unit test, and we want to ensure that this class performs as per the specification. So the first thing is that you need to go to nunit.org and download the NUnit tool. NUnit is basically a unit testing framework, by which you can do unit testing on .NET languages. So the first thing is that you go to the nunit.org, go to the download page, and you can download the latest version of NUnit. Once you have downloaded the latest version of NUnit and you have installed it, you will get something like this in your all program files. Call as NUnit, whatever version you have downloaded, and some samples, runtime, and the NUnit software. So that's the first step we need to perform. That's the first step we need to perform from the NUnit perspective. So the next step is to basically go and add a class project. So right click on your solution, add new project, and just select a class project from Visual C#. So add a class library, and then we need to make a couple of references in the class library. Now this class library is nothing but your unit test class library. So here's my invoice class, my core class which I'm going to test, that is my CLS invoice calculation, and I have created a new class project which will have my unit test. So in the unit test project, in the unit test class project, you need to make two references. One is of the invoice project itself, because you're going to test this project. So I've made the reference of my invoice class in the invoice unit test, and the second one you need to reference is the nunit.framework DLL. So add reference, and nunit.framework DLL you can get from the C program files where NUnit is installed. So go to C program files, go to NUnit, you can go to bin net 2.0, and there is a framework. So you need to select the nunit.framework.dll. So that's the next step we need to do. So create a class project, reference your class which you want to test, that is the invoice class at this moment I have, and reference your nunit.framework.dll, by which you can basically create your test and and execute the test plan. So now let's write our unit test plan. So for that we need to first create a class. You can create some class, like over here I have created CLS invoice unit test. In that I have made a function called as test invoice calculation. So the first thing I'm doing is that I'm creating the object of CLS invoice calculation class which I'm going to test, and I'm passing him some data, my test data, that is 10 and 20. So basically I am passing him per product cost as 10 and the number of product as 20. So that means the total cost we are expecting is 200. And I'm using the NUnit command, that is assert, saying that my expected value is 200, and if the expected value matches with the value given by the function, then please pass this test case. Now, in order that NUnit detects this test case, you need to attribute your class with test fixture, and you need to attribute your test function or test method with test. So now once that is done, it's time to compile a DLL of this class, and it's time to load the same in the NUnit framework. So here's my compiled DLL, invite unit test DLL. Now this unit test DLL we need to run using our NUnit installation or the NUnit framework. So let's go file, open project, and let's browse to unit test. Let's open it. Now the time you open it, you will see that after at your left hand side, you can see all your unit tests what you have in your CLS unit test class. So at this moment our unit test is test invoice calculation. So let's run that. Now if the color change is green and everything runs fine, so that means the test has passed. Now let's do one thing. Let's inject a small defect in our project. So let's go to a class and let's say that this is a plus, and let's compile this. So in other words, now the calculation is wrong, and the 10 and 20 will give output as 30. It will not give 200. So it means something has gone wrong in the calculation logic. So this will not match our test plan, or it will not actually, our test plan will not be passed, and we should get a failure. So let's go and run this now. So there you can see that the expected was 20, but it returned 30. So that means this test plan failed. Now in real projects, actually you can get a lot of test plans over here, because at this moment I have just only one. But in actual project you can get a lot of test plans when you actually write unit tests for big projects. So that's the way you can execute what you call unit testing using NUnit. Definitely, whatever example I have shown is very novice. It doesn't really take out the practicality of NUnit. And as we go on in this question and answer series, we will talk more about NUnit, and we will see that how we can remove the hard coding of the data, how we can basically pass, how we can make the NUnit more parameterized, and a lot of other things. The other popular way of doing unit testing is by using Visual Studio Team System 2008, the Visual Studio Test System. So ensure that you have Visual Studio Team System. Now in Visual Studio Team System, they have given a test menu. So if you click on the new test from the test menu, you can see that it has provided a provision of doing unit testing using Visual Studio. Now, if you really ask me that when should we use a unit test NUnit, and when should we use a Visual Studio, is that if you're going to do testing, or if you're going to do programming using Visual Studio 2005, where there is no special provision of unit testing, you can use NUnit. In case you are doing new development using Visual Studio 2008, you can better go for the unit test provided by Visual Studio 2008 Team System Test Edition. Okay, so in order to add a test solution, first you need to click on add a new project, and you can see that there is a test project template here. So at this moment I have created a simple Visual Studio test project, and as soon as you create a test project, it basically gives you a simple class as we had in NUnit. So it basically gives you a nice skeleton. So over here you can see that the main unit testing class is been fixtured as test class, and the method which is basically going to do the testing is fixtured as test method. You can also see that we have created our CLS invoice calculation class here. We have basically created an object of the CLS invoice calculation class, and we have passed him 10 and 20, and we are expecting 200 as the output. Okay, and the asserts.r equal basically remains same. The command remains same as we had for unit testing in NUnit. So if you compare this with NUnit, basically in NUnit we were using test fixture, while in unit testing we are using test class. In NUnit we used the test attribute to attribute our